The sky was heavy with dark clouds, and the wind moved slowly across the empty field where the funeral was taking place. The alien girl stood near the grave, her face pale and her eyes red from crying. She tried to be strong, but her body was shaking. Around her were only a few elders who whispered among themselves. Most of her people had chosen not to come. They feared shame. They feared the memory of the soldier who had married a human ally, and some even hated him for fighting beside humans. The girl's hands clutched the long black cloth she wore. She looked down at the fresh earth where her husband's body was being lowered. Every sound, the creak of the ropes, the thud of soil falling, cut through her heart like a knife. She felt abandoned, not only by her husband who had died in battle, but also by the community that should have stood with her in this moment. She kept her head low, but tears still slid down her cheeks. She thought she was truly alone until the sound of footsteps broke the silence. From the distance, a tall human figure walked toward the grave. His uniform was worn, the marks of battle still clear on his jacket. His face was tired but strong, his eyes focused only on the grave. Whispers rose among the few who stood nearby. "Why is a human here?" one muttered. "He doesn't belong," another hissed. But the human kept walking, slow and steady, not caring about their words. He stopped near the grave, and for a moment, the world seemed to pause. The alien girl lifted her eyes slightly, and her breath caught. She knew him. Her husband had once spoken about this man, his battle partner, his trusted comrade. She remembered hearing the stories of how the two had fought together against impossible odds. Now, here he was, the only one brave enough to come when even her own people stayed away. The human bent his knee in front of the grave. His hand touched the soil with respect, and then he raised his arm in a sharp soldier's salute. No words were spoken, but the meaning was clear. This was not just a man paying respect. This was a brother saying goodbye. The alien widow's chest tightened. For the first time since the battle had taken her husband, she felt that someone else truly understood her pain. The elders frowned, whispering louder now, angry that a human dared to show such honor in their sacred ground. But the human ignored them. He stood tall, his eyes steady, his voice low but strong as he finally spoke. "He was not just your husband," he said quietly, yet his words carried across the silence. "He was my brother. He saved my life more times than I can count. I could not let him be buried without someone to honor him." The alien girl's tears fell harder. She covered her face for a moment, then lowered her hands, looking at the human with raw emotion. In her eyes was a question she could not say aloud. "Why did you come when no one else did?" The human seemed to understand, and though he said nothing more, the weight of his presence answered everything. When the burial was complete and the last soil covered the grave, the crowd began to leave. The elders walked away with stiff steps, muttering about tradition and dishonor. Soon, only the alien girl and the human remained standing near the mound of earth. The silence was heavy, broken only by the sound of the wind. The human looked at her, his eyes filled with both strength and sorrow. "He spoke of you often," he said softly. "In the camp, during battles, he always wanted to return to you. You gave him a reason to fight, even when death was near." Her lips trembled, and she lowered her gaze. Hearing this, her heart felt torn. She wanted to ask more, to know everything her husband had said in those final moments. But the pain was too fresh, and words failed her. The human slowly reached into his jacket pocket. His hand came out, holding a small sealed note. The paper was worn, but carefully protected. He held it toward her. "He left this for you," he said, his last words, written before the final battle. Her hands shook as she accepted it. She wanted to open it right there, but her body was too weak. She clutched it against her chest as if it were life itself. The human stepped back, giving her space, his eyes still watching over her with quiet loyalty. In that moment, she felt a strange mix of fear and comfort. Fear, because this human reminded her too much of the war and of the death that had taken her husband. Comfort, because he was here when no one else was. Her own people had abandoned her, yet this human had come without hesitation. The sky grumbled with distant thunder. She stood at the grave, the note pressed against her heart, while the human remained close, silent, but strong. Somewhere inside her, a new question began to grow. Why did my husband trust this man so much? Why did he choose him? above all others, to carry his last words to me. The funeral ended not with peace, but with mystery. The widow walked away slowly, her steps unsteady, while the human followed at a respectful distance. Behind them, the grave rested alone under the storm clouds, holding secrets only the dead and the living brother-in-arms knew. The night was quiet, but the alien widow could not sleep. She sat near the small fire in her house, her eyes fixed on the folded note the human soldier had given her. Her fingers trembled as she held it, feeling the weight of her husband's final words inside. She was afraid to open it, afraid that what was written would break her heart even more. Yet her curiosity burned stronger than her fear. Slowly, she unsealed it and unfolded the paper with careful hands. The handwriting was rough, written in haste, but every word carried his spirit. "My love," it began, and already her eyes filled with tears. She read on, her lips moving silently with each line. "If you are reading this, it means I have not returned. I fought to survive, but fate chose another path for me. I do not ask you to mourn forever. Instead, I beg you to live." Her chest tightened, and she pressed the paper closer, as if holding him again. But then the words changed, and her heart pounded harder. "Listen to me carefully. There are those who will come after you. They will not forgive my choice to fight beside humans. They will say you carry shame, but in truth, it is you they want. If I fall, they will not stop until they reach you. Trust only him, my brother in battle, the human who stands beside me even in death. He will protect you when I cannot." She gasped, her hands shaking so badly that the paper nearly slipped from her fingers. The warning felt like a shadow entering her home. She looked around the room, as if expecting enemies to appear from the darkness. Her husband had known this would happen. He had not only fought for her, but he had left her under the protection of the very human who stood at his grave. Her thoughts spun. Could she really trust him? He was a human, different in every way from her people. Yet her husband's words were clear. Trust only him. She folded the letter again, pressing it against her chest as tears rolled down her cheeks. A soft knock broke the silence. She froze, her breath caught in her throat. At this hour, no one visited. Slowly, she stood and moved to the door. When she opened it, the human soldier was there, standing in the pale light of the moon. His face was calm, but his eyes searched hers with quiet intensity. "I thought you should not be alone tonight," he said softly. His voice was steady, but there was a weight behind it, like he carried burdens too heavy for one man. She wanted to send him away, to keep her world closed, but the fear from the letter was still fresh in her heart. Instead, she stepped aside. He entered silently, standing near the fire, his tall frame casting shadows against the wall. For a while, neither spoke. The only sound was the crackling of the fire. Finally, she whispered, "He left me a message. He told me to trust you." The human looked down, his jaw tightening. "I knew he would," he murmured. He sat slowly, as if the weight of memory was pressing on him. His hands rested on his knees, but his eyes were far away, remembering battles, remembering blood. She stared at him, waiting, needing answers. Why? Why you? He had family. He had comrades of his own kind. Why would he choose you? The human met her gaze, and for a moment she saw the pain inside him. "Because I was there," he said. "Every time he fought, I was beside him. We saved each other's lives. On the battlefield, blood makes family. He trusted me with his back, his life, and his last breath. He knew I would not fail him." Her eyes filled again, but this time the tears were not only grief. They were something else. Recognition. Maybe even understanding. She wanted to argue, but deep inside, she felt the truth of his words. Her husband's trust had not been given lightly. The human reached into his pocket and pulled out a small pendant, her husband's insignia, the mark of his warrior clan. He placed it gently on the table between them. "He gave me this before the last battle," he explained. "He said if anything happened, I should bring it back to you. He told me to make sure you lived." Her hands trembled as she picked up the pendant. It was warm from his touch, but the metal still carried the memory of her husband. She held it tightly, her chest aching. The silence in the room grew heavier, as if her husband's spirit stood between them. Then the human leaned forward slightly, his voice low but firm. "There is more you should know. His death, it was not only because of the enemy in front of us. He was betrayed." Her heart stopped. She looked at him with wide eyes. "Betrayed? By who?" The soldier's face darkened, his eyes sharp with anger. By his own people. Orders were delayed, reinforcements never came. They left us to die, but he stayed and fought, not for them, for you. He refused to surrender your name, your location. That is why he fell. Her breath broke into sobs. She covered her mouth, the pain too much to bear. She had thought his death was just war, just fate. Now she knew it was betrayal. Her people had abandoned him, and worse, they had targeted her. The human did not move closer, but his presence was solid, like a shield in the dark. That is why you must be careful, he said. They will come for you now, and when they do, I will be here. She lowered her hands, her tears shining in the firelight. She wanted to hate him for saying such words, but instead, she felt something else, safety. For the first time since her husband's death, she was not completely alone. Outside, the night was still, but in the distance, unseen eyes watched. Shadows shifted quietly near her home, enemies already moving. The widow did not know it yet, but danger was closer than she imagined. The only thing between her and that darkness was the human her husband had trusted until his last breath. The night dragged on slowly, but the widow could not rest. She sat near the dim fire, the folded letter still clutched against her chest. The words from her husband repeated in her mind like a whisper. If I fall, they will come for you. Trust only him. Every creak of the wooden walls, every rustle outside made her heart beat faster. She felt as if unseen eyes were already on her, watching, waiting. The house was quiet, but the silence did not comfort her. Instead, it grew heavier, pressing down like a shadow. She rose to her feet and walked to the small window. Outside, the moonlight spread across the empty fields. Nothing moved. Yet her skin prickled, her instincts telling her she was not alone. She turned away quickly and tightened the shutters, her hands trembling. The human soldier sat near the fire, his back straight, his eyes scanning the room like a guard who never allowed himself to rest. He had refused to leave her side after the funeral. She had wanted him gone, at first, but now she could not deny his presence, gave her a strange sense of safety. Still, her mind struggled with doubt. Could she trust him fully? He was human, an outsider. Her people had always taught her not to rely on his kind, but her husband's warning left her with no choice. She sat down again, her voice barely above a whisper. The letter? It said they will come for me. It said I should trust only you. The human nodded slowly. His face was serious, his eyes never leaving hers. He knew what was coming, he said quietly. He knew his enemies would not stop with him, and he knew I would keep his word. Her lips trembled. She wanted to ask more, to press him for answers, but before she could speak, a faint sound came from outside. It was soft at first, like a foot brushing against dry grass. Her body went cold. She turned her head toward the door. The human's hand instantly went to his weapon. His eyes narrowed, sharp and alert. The sound came again, this time closer. A shadow passed quickly across the thin crack under the door. The widow's breath caught. She clutched the pendant her husband had left her, holding it tight as if it could shield her. The human stood silently, his posture tense, every muscle ready. Then came the knock, slow, heavy, not the gentle knock of a neighbor. It was deliberate, meant to freeze the blood in her veins. The widow's heart pounded so loudly, she thought the stranger outside might hear it. She looked at the human, panic flashing in her eyes. Stay behind me, he whispered firmly. He moved closer to the door, his weapon drawn, but he did not open it. Instead, he listened. The knock came again, harder this time. A rough voice followed, muffled through the wood. Open the door. We know you are inside. Her blood turned to ice. She knew that voice did not belong to her people. It was harsher, deeper. Mercenaries, the ones her husband had warned her about. Her knees weakened, and she nearly sank to the floor. The human pressed a finger to his lips, signaling her to stay quiet. He stepped back from the door, his stance wide, ready for whatever would happen next. The silence stretched for a moment, but it did not last. A sudden crash shook the house as the door burst inward, splinters flying. Figures rushed in, armed and cloaked in the darkness of night. The widow screamed, stumbling back toward the corner. Her eyes filled with terror as she saw the intruder's weapons glint in the firelight. But before they could reach her, the human charged forward. His movements were sharp, precise, practiced. He slammed into the first attacker, knocking the weapon from his hand, and drove his fist into the man's face. The mercenary fell hard to the ground. The others roared and attacked. Steel clashed against steel as the human fought fiercely, his body moving with deadly speed. Every strike, every block, carried the weight of countless battles. The widow pressed herself against the wall, clutching the pendant, her breath ragged as she watched. One mercenary broke free from the fight and advanced toward her, his teeth bared in a cruel grin. "The widow," he sneered. "Your husband died for nothing. Give us what he left behind." He raised his blade, ready to strike. Her scream cut the air, but the attack never landed. The human spun, catching the mercenary's arm mid-swing, and drove his blade deep into the man's chest. The mercenary gasped and fell lifeless to the floor. The others hesitated for a moment, realizing their prey was not as defenseless as they had thought. But they did not retreat. They wanted something. Something her husband had hidden. Their eyes flicked toward her, burning with greed and hatred. The fight raged on. The human soldier struck with precision, but he was outnumbered. Blood stained his arm where a blade had cut him, yet he refused to falter. His only focus was keeping her alive. At last, he overpowered one of the intruders and forced him to the ground, pressing the edge of his weapon against the man's throat. "Why are you here?" the human demanded, his voice like thunder. The mercenary laughed, blood dripping from his lips. "She carries his shame and his secret. He would not betray her, so he died, but we will finish what he could not prevent." The widow's eyes widened in horror. Her husband had died protecting her, refusing to give them what they wanted. She fell to her knees, her heart breaking all over again. The human pressed harder against the man's throat. "What secret?" he growled. The mercenary only sneered. "You will find out soon enough. More will come. You cannot stop them all." With a swift strike, the human ended his words forever. Silence filled the house once more, broken only by the widow's sobs. The human turned toward her, his chest heaving, blood and sweat marking his skin. His eyes softened when he looked at her. He reached out his hand. "You are not safe here anymore," he said. "We must leave before more arrive." Her hand shook as she placed it in his, fear and trust battling inside her heart. She did not know where he would take her, or what dangers lay ahead. But one thing was clear now. Her husband had been right. Enemies were coming, and only this human stood between her and the darkness. The widow's home was left in ruins after the attack. Broken wood from the door lay scattered across the floor, blood stained the walls, and the fire had almost died. She sat trembling in the corner, clutching the pendant her husband had left her, while the human soldier stood near the shattered doorway, his weapon still in his hand. His breathing was heavy, his arms cut and bruised, but his eyes stayed sharp, scanning the shadows outside as if more enemies might appear any moment. The widow's voice shook as she whispered, "They came for me. My husband knew. He knew this would happen." The human turned his head toward her. His voice was calm but firm. "They are mercenaries, paid killers, but someone sent them, and that means someone close to your people betrayed him. Betrayed you." Her heart clenched. Betrayal. That word felt heavier than death. She had always believed her husband had fallen bravely in battle, but now the truth was darker. His own side had left him to die. She tried to breathe, but the pain inside her chest felt like it would tear her apart. Before she could reply, a noise came from the back of the house. Both of them froze. The human raised his weapon again, his body instantly tense. He motioned for her to stay low. Slowly, he stepped toward the noise. The widow clutched the pendant tighter, praying silently. The door at the back burst open, and two more mercenaries stormed inside. They were taller, heavier, their eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. One of them snarled, "We told you, widow! Hand it over! Where is the device?" The widow gasped. Device? Her mind spun in confusion. She had no idea what they were talking about. But then her husband's words returned to her. "They will not forgive my choice. They will not stop until they reach you." Had he hidden something without telling her? Something dangerous? The human lunged at the attackers before they could move further inside. His blade clashed against theirs, sparks flying as steel struck steel. The room filled with the sounds of growls, shouts, and the crash of bodies against walls. The widow watched, frozen with fear, but also with awe. The human moved like a storm, his strikes fast and precise, each movement meant to kill or protect. One mercenary swung hard, and the human barely blocked in time. The impact forced him back, his shoulder slamming into the wall. The second mercenary charged toward the widow, grinning with sharp teeth. She screamed, stumbling back, but before the blade could reach her, the human threw his dagger across the room. It struck the mercenary in the chest, dropping him instantly. The last one roared in anger, swinging wildly. The human ducked under the strike and drove his weapon deep into the attacker's side. The mercenary choked, coughed blood, and collapsed to the floor. Silence returned once again, broken only by the widow's rapid breaths. She pressed her hand to her chest, trying to calm herself, but her mind was on the words they had spoken. The device. She turned to the human. What device? What were they talking about? He wiped blood from his arm, his face set in a grim expression. Your husband must have hidden something. Something they want badly enough to kill for. She shook her head. He never told me about any device. The human's eyes narrowed. Then he must have kept it secret to protect you. If it is as dangerous as I think, he knew you would be hunted for it. The widow felt her stomach twist. Her husband had not only died for her, he had left behind something far greater than she understood, something worth killing over. The human knelt beside one of the dying mercenaries, grabbing him by the collar. What device? He demanded. The mercenary's mouth curled into a bloody smile. His voice was weak, but filled with hatred. You don't even know, do you? He carried knowledge. Technology, a weapon that could end wars. And he hid it from us. He died because he refused to betray her. His eyes flicked toward the widow. She knows nothing, but she will pay for his loyalty. The human's grip tightened, and with a swift motion, he ended the mercenary's last breath. He stood slowly, his jaw clenched, his eyes burning with quiet rage. The widow's hands shook. She felt cold all over. A weapon? She whispered. The human looked at her. If your husband really carried such a thing, then we cannot stay here. They will keep coming, stronger each time. We have to find it before they do. Her knees weakened, and she leaned against the wall. She had lost her husband, her people had abandoned her, and now she was the target of killers hunting for a weapon she had never even heard of. The weight was too much. Tears streamed down her face. Why would he hide this from me? The human's voice softened slightly. To protect you. The less you knew, the safer you were. He trusted me to carry the burden with him. Now that he's gone, I must carry it for both of us. The widow stared at him, her heart torn between fear and anger. Her husband's trust in this human was clear, but still it felt unbearable to be left in the dark. Yet as she looked at the soldier, standing bloodied but unshaken after saving her again, she realized she had no choice. Her survival depended on him. The wind howled outside, carrying the faint sound of more footsteps in the distance. The human turned his head sharply, his eyes narrowing. They will not stop, he said. We need to move now. He reached out his hand to her. For a moment, she hesitated, staring at his rough, battle-scarred hand. Then, slowly, she placed her trembling fingers in his. The human pulled her close, his voice low but steady. I promised him I would protect you, and I will. But you must trust me now, no matter what happens. Her heart pounded as she nodded, her tears still falling. Together they stepped into the night, leaving behind the broken house. The grave danger was no longer just a whisper in her husband's letter. It was real. It was here, and it was hunting them without mercy. The widow realized that her husband's last words were not only a warning, but a path, and that path now tied her fate to the human standing at her side. The cold night air wrapped around them as they left the broken house behind. The widow held the pendant close to her chest while following the human soldier. Her legs were weak, but fear pushed her forward. They moved quickly through the empty paths, avoiding the main roads. Every sound in the dark made her flinch. Every shadow felt like an enemy waiting to strike. After some time, they reached an old storage hut at the edge of the village. The human pushed the door open and led her inside. It smelled of dust and rusted metal. Broken tools lay scattered on the ground, and wooden crates leaned against the walls. He lit a small lantern, and the dim light revealed the room clearly. We'll be safe here for a while, he said firmly, though his eyes still searched every corner. The widow sank onto a crate, exhausted. Her voice was soft but sharp with fear. They said they want a device. They said he died protecting it. But I don't know anything about it. Her words cracked. Why would he hide something like that from me? The human sat across from her, his face hard but calm. Because this is not just a simple device. If it's what I think, it's dangerous. A weapon your husband did not trust in the hands of either side. That's why he kept it secret. Her eyes widened. She shook her head slowly. A weapon? He never told me. He promised me no more secrets. But now, everything is secret. Tears welled in her eyes, but she wiped them away quickly, refusing to break completely. The human leaned forward, his voice steady. He did it to keep you alive. He knew the less you knew, the safer you were. But now the danger is here, and we cannot run from it. We have to find the device before they do. The widow lowered her head, clutching the pendant tighter. Her thoughts spun. She remembered her husband's long nights working in silence, the times he left without explaining why, the hidden looks in his eyes when she asked too many questions. Perhaps those were the moments he was hiding this secret. And now, it was her burden to face. The human stood and began searching the hut. He moved the crates, checked under the floorboards, and tapped on the walls. He would have hidden it somewhere close, he muttered. Somewhere no one would think to look. She rose slowly and watched him. How would you know where he hid it? She asked. He looked at her, his eyes tired but sure. Because I knew him. I fought beside him. I understood how he thought. If he wanted to keep something safe, he would put it somewhere ordinary, somewhere people would not suspect. The widow swallowed hard and began to search as well. She moved the crates with trembling hands, brushed away layers of dust, and checked beneath the old tools. At first, nothing appeared. But then, near the back wall, her hand touched a loose stone. Her heart skipped. She pulled it aside, and behind it, hidden in the wall, was a small metal box. Her breath caught. Here, she whispered. Her fingers shook as she pulled it out. The box was heavy, made of dark steel with strange markings carved into the surface. She placed it carefully on the floor between them. The human crouched down, his eyes narrowing. He ran his hand over the strange marks. This is alien tech, he said softly. Not from your people, and not from mine. It's older, more advanced. If this is what they wanted, it could change everything. The widow's stomach twisted. She looked at the box as if it were alive. He kept this all along? He never told me. Her voice broke, and she covered her mouth, fighting back tears. The human placed a hand gently on the box, but did not open it. His voice was low. He was right not to tell you. If anyone knew you had this, you would have been killed long ago. But now they already suspect. We can't leave it here. We have to move before they return. She stared at the box, torn between fear and anger. It felt like betrayal. Her husband had kept this secret, even from her. But deep inside, she also understood. He had died protecting it, protecting her. Slowly, she nodded. Then we take it. But what will we do with it? The human looked at her, his expression firm. Keep it safe, out of their hands. Maybe destroy it if we must. But for now, survival comes first. Before she could answer, a faint hum filled the air. The box glowed faintly, the markings lighting up in a soft blue. The widow gasped and stumbled back. What is it doing? She whispered. The human's eyes widened. It's activating. He reached for his weapon instinctively, though it would do nothing against whatever technology this was. The glow grew brighter, casting strange shadows on the walls. The widow pressed herself against the crates, fear shaking her body. Suddenly, the box gave a sharp pulse of light, and the air in the hut shifted. Dust swirled in circles, as if pulled by invisible hands. The widow covered her face, her heart racing. The human grabbed the box and forced it closed, the glow fading as he pressed it shut again. Silence returned, but their breathing was fast and heavy. The widow looked at him, her eyes wide with terror. If they find out what this can do, they will never stop. They will burn everything to take it. The human nodded grimly, sliding the box into his pack. Then we make sure they don't. For a long moment, neither spoke. The only sound was the wind outside and the beating of their hearts. The widow sat down slowly, her body trembling. Her husband's secret was no longer just a mystery. It was alive, dangerous, and now it was in her hands. The human placed a hand on her shoulder, his voice steady, but heavy with promise. You are not alone in this. He gave his life to protect you. I will not let that sacrifice be wasted. Whatever comes, I will stand with you. Her eyes filled with tears again, but this time she did not hide them. She nodded slowly, knowing her life would never be the same. The device was real, the danger was growing, and her only shield now was the human her husband had trusted more than anyone else. The night was long, and every step through the ruined city felt heavier than the last. The widow clutched her cloak tightly around her shoulders, the cold air cutting through her bones. Beside her, the human soldier carried the strange metal box in his pack, his eyes sharp and watchful as they moved through empty streets. The city was broken, its buildings cracked from war, fires long extinguished but leaving behind black scars. Silence hung everywhere, but it was not peaceful. It was the silence of a place abandoned out of fear. The widow's heart raced with every echo of their footsteps. She looked around, her voice trembling. "Where are you taking me?" The human glanced at her but kept walking. "There is an old military outpost beyond the city, hidden, half in ruins, but it still has what we need. Weapons, supplies, and walls strong enough to hold if we're lucky." She lowered her eyes. "And if we're not lucky?" He stopped for a moment, turning to face her. His voice was quiet, steady, but hard. "Then we fight until there is no more fight left, just like he did." Her throat tightened. She looked away quickly, unable to meet his eyes, because in them she saw the same fire she had once seen in her husband's. The same fire that had taken him from her. They moved on, weaving through broken alleys and empty courtyards. The widow's legs shook, but she refused to stop. Every step reminded her of the warning in her husband's letter: trust only him. It felt strange, walking beside this human, feeling both fear and safety at the same time. At last, they reached a collapsed bridge that overlooked the river. The human stopped and scanned the horizon. The water below reflected the pale moonlight, broken by ripples of debris. Across the river, she could see the faint outline of the outpost. It looked half dead, its towers leaning, its walls cracked, but compared to the ruins around them, it was the closest thing to hope. But the bridge was destroyed. The center had fallen, leaving only jagged stone edges. The widow's heart sank. "We cannot cross," she whispered. The human studied the gap, then looked at her. "We can, but you must trust me." Her stomach twisted. Trust. That word followed her everywhere now, heavy and inescapable. She nodded slowly. He tied a rope he carried to a broken beam and tested it with his weight. Without hesitation, he swung across first, landing firmly on the other side. Then he tied the rope tightly, stretching it for her. "Your turn," he called softly. Her hands shook as she held the rope. The gap was wide, the river black and endless below. Her knees weakened. For a moment, she thought she could not do it. But then she remembered the mercenary's words. She will pay for his loyalty. If she stayed behind, she would die. She gritted her teeth and stepped onto the rope. Her body swayed, her breath fast and shallow. Every step felt like the rope would break. The human's voice reached her. "Don't look down. Look at me. Just me." Her eyes locked on his, and somehow her fear lessened. She moved forward slowly, step by step, until his hands finally caught her wrists and pulled her to safety. She collapsed against him, trembling, her heart racing. For a moment, he held her steady, his hand firm on her shoulder. "You're stronger than you think," he said. She pulled away quickly, embarrassed by her weakness, but inside, his words burned into her chest. Stronger than she thought. No one had told her that before, not even her husband. They continued their journey and finally reached the gates of the outpost. The walls loomed over them, cracked but tall. The human pushed against the gate until it creaked open just enough for them to slip inside. The air was heavy with dust and the smell of old smoke. Broken machines and weapons lay scattered across the courtyard. The widow looked around with wide eyes. "This place, it looks dead." The human shook his head. "Dead places can still hide life. Stay close." They searched the outpost, moving through empty halls lit only by the moonlight through broken ceilings. Every sound echoed, every shadow stretched long. In one room, they found a stash of old weapons. In another, dried food sealed in metal cans. The human packed what they could carry. "This will keep us alive for a while," he said. The widow touched the wall, her fingers brushing across carvings left by soldiers long gone. She whispered, almost to herself, "He must have walked in places like this with you. He must have trusted you with more than just his life." The human looked at her quietly. His voice was low when he answered. "He was more than a comrade. He was my brother. Blood did not bind us, but the battlefield did. He asked me for one promise, and I will not break it." Her eyes filled with tears. She turned away quickly, not wanting him to see. Her heart ached, but a part of her also felt warmth. Maybe, Just maybe, her husband had not left her as alone as she thought. Suddenly, a sound echoed through the outpost, a sharp clang of metal falling. Both froze. The human raised his weapon instantly, signaling her to stay back. From the shadows, voices whispered. The mercenaries had found them. The widow's chest tightened, fear gripping her again. But when she looked at the human, she saw no fear in his eyes, only determination. He turned to her, his voice strong and calm. "They are here. Stay behind me. No matter what happens, I will not let them take you." Her lips trembled, but she nodded. For the first time since her husband's death, she felt something other than grief. She felt the spark of hope. As the enemies closed in, the human stood tall, ready to fight again. The widow clutched the pendant against her heart and whispered silently to her husband's memory. He had trusted this man to protect her, and now she finally understood why. Her fate was no longer hers alone. It was bound to the human who fought not for glory, but for the promise he had made to a fallen brother. The night inside the outpost was broken by the sound of boots and the clinking of weapons. Shadows moved along the ruined walls as the mercenaries spread out, their voices low but sharp. The widow's breath caught in her throat. She pressed herself against the cold stone, clutching the pendant tight to her chest. The human stood in front of her, his body a barrier, his weapon raised and steady. His eyes never blinked, scanning every dark corner. The first mercenary appeared through the broken archway, snarling as he charged forward. The human struck fast, his blade flashing in the dim moonlight. The enemy fell, his body crumpling to the ground without a sound. But more followed, climbing over the rubble, weapons gleaming. The outpost, once silent, became a storm of violence. The human moved like a force of nature. Every strike was precise, every block calculated. Blood stained his arm where he was cut, but he fought on without slowing. The widow's heart raced as she watched. Fear consumed her, but at the same time, she felt something else, admiration. He was one man against many, yet he stood tall, as if nothing could break him. One mercenary slipped past him, rushing toward her. She froze, her legs too weak to move. The blade was raised, and she thought it was the end. But the human roared and hurled himself between them. The strike slashed across his side, blood spilling, but he did not fall. With a swift motion, he drove his weapon through the mercenary's chest, ending him instantly. He staggered, but forced himself upright, his eyes burning with fury. "Stay behind me," he growled, his voice heavy with pain but full of fire. Tears streamed down her face as she whispered, "Why do you keep risking everything? Why would you bleed for me?" For a moment, the battle noise seemed to fade, and his answer came like steel. "Because I gave him my word. He was my brother, and you are his last wish." Her lips trembled. His words pierced her heart, filling the hollow space her husband had left. She no longer saw him as just a human soldier. He was the living bond of her husband's final promise. The fight raged on. The mercenaries shouted, surrounding them from all sides. The human's strength began to waver, but still he fought with everything left in him. Blood dripped from his wounds, his breath heavy, but his determination never broke. The widow pressed her back against the wall, her eyes darting to the pack that held the strange device. Her husband had died to keep it hidden. Now the human bled to protect it, and her. She felt something stir inside her, something stronger than fear. She could not let his sacrifice be wasted. When another mercenary leapt forward, aiming for the human's back, she grabbed a broken metal rod from the floor and struck with all her strength. The enemy stumbled, surprised by her defiance, and the human finished him with a quick strike. He glanced back at her, and for the first time, their eyes met not as protector and protected, but as partners fighting for the same cause. But the enemy numbers were too many. The human's knees nearly buckled as another blow landed. He pushed forward, striking down one more, but his body trembled with exhaustion. The widow's heart pounded. They would both die here unless something changed. Her gaze fell to the metal box, her husband's secret, the device that could end wars. Her breath caught. She understood now. This was the only chance left. With shaking hands, she pulled the box from the pack. It glowed faintly, the strange symbols lighting up as if it could sense her touch. The human's eyes widened. "No, don't," he shouted, but another mercenary's attack cut him off, forcing him back into the fight. The widow pressed her trembling fingers against the surface of the box. The glow brightened, a deep hum filling the air. The symbols shifted, rearranging like living light. She didn't know what she was doing, but something inside her guided her hands. Perhaps it was her husband's blood in her veins, perhaps destiny. The box suddenly pulsed with a burst of energy that spread across the courtyard. The mercenaries staggered, clutching their heads as the pulse knocked them to the ground. Weapons clattered from their hands. The human shielded his eyes from the flash, but when he looked again, he saw the widow standing in the center of the glow, the device alive in her hands. Her voice was strong now, steady. This is why he died, to keep this from them, to keep it safe. The mercenaries groaned on the ground, too weak to rise. The glow faded, and silence returned. The widow fell to her knees, exhausted, the device still in her arms. The human rushed to her side, blood dripping from his wounds, and knelt beside her. He placed a hand gently on her shoulder, his voice softer now. "You saved us both. You saved his memory." Her tears flowed freely, but she smiled faintly through them. "No, we saved each other." He looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. He knew her words were true. Without her courage, they would have fallen. Without his strength, she would never have survived to use the device. Together, they had turned despair into victory. The night slowly quieted. The mercenaries lay defeated, the outpost still standing. The human helped her to her feet, his arm steadying her. She looked at him with new eyes, not just as her protector, but as the man who carried her husband's last promise with unshakable loyalty. They walked to the edge of the outpost, where the moonlight touched the broken walls. The widow held the pendant in one hand, the device in the other. She whispered softly toward the sky, as if speaking to her husband's spirit. "You are gone, but I am not alone. Your brother stands with me." The human stood beside her in silence, watching the horizon. The road ahead was still uncertain, full of danger. But now they were not just running. They were fighting with purpose. The promise of a fallen soldier had become the bond between them, stronger than blood, stronger than fear. And as the night gave way to dawn, the widow felt something she thought she had lost forever: hope.